Deion Sanders was going into his junior year at Florida State. After being named second-team All-American as just a sophomore, Deion was on his way to try and become a first-team All-American his junior season. And this Florida State defense around Deion looked like it was in prime shape to go and compete for the ACC championship. And after the offense struggled last season, they were in a good rhythm to start the year off, and they needed that rhythm against Notre Dame. This was already one of the biggest games of the year as number 7 Notre Dame came to Florida State and they were trying to knock them off. That forced fumble would set up this touchdown, and on the very next possession, Notre Dame's QB wouldn't look Deion's way, but he would attack the other corner who would intercept it, and he would put him in another good spot to score. It was quickly 14-0, and it looked like Florida State was going to run away with this one, but Notre Dame started to turn up, and it didn't help that Deion took out his own man on the way to this Notre Dame touchdown. But I'm going to be real, that touchdown was the only big play that they were going to get because Florida State's defense would turn up from there. Deion not even a hitter for real, but when he laid that boom, it inspired the whole team. The offense took that juice and turned it into a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and by the time Notre Dame got the ball back, they were trying to get back on Deion, but he would take this interception and end the game. They'd be able to pull off the upset against 7th ranked Notre Dame. We were in a crazy defensive battle with Florida State visiting Virginia in this ACC game. Neither team was able to score in the first quarter, and in the second quarter, it didn't look like anyone was going to get points on the board either. Each team was getting stop after stop. It wasn't until just a minute left in the second quarter, Jordan Travis would run this read option, and he'd be able to take it all the way to the 1-inch line. They'd punch it in from there. And Virginia said they not scared of the All-American Deion. They would throw this perfectly placed ball over his head. Virginia'd be able to capitalize and tie the game up in the third quarter, but by the fourth quarter, Jordan Travis turned it up with his legs again, scoring from almost 20 yards out. After that perfectly thrown ball against Deion earlier in the game, they kept attacking him, but this time Deion wasn't having any of it. And he honestly felt disrespected, especially when they tried it again late in the game. He would take this interception, and instead of going down, he would take it all the way for a touchdown. He wanted to put not only the ACC on notice, but the entire country that he was here and he was ready to take over college football. And Florida State was bound to be a top 5 team after this deciding win. Taulia Tagovailoa and Maryland would go into Florida State and they were trying to pull off the upset, but they weren't helping themselves because once they got inside the 20-yard line, they would fumble and Deion would recover it. The very next drive, they would attack Deion personally and he would intercept it and make him pay for it. I mean, you're not going to keep trying this man, Deion. It's disrespectful. And the interception was going to lead to this Florida State touchdown to take the lead. Deion would get picked by his own man on this route and Maryland would score the touchdown, tying it up in the second quarter. But Florida State would answer with the touchdown of their own, and by the fourth quarter, this game was already out of hand. Jordan Travis would do what he does best, and he would run it in for another touchdown. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but it really be raining like 80% of these games at Florida State. And after Deion broke up this deep pass, NIU would try and attack him again with a different receiver, but Deion was a little gassed and he couldn't keep up this time. Florida State found themselves in a situation they don't usually find themselves, and that's losing in the ball game. So the defense decided to pick up the slack, and after that forced fumble, they would make this stop on 4th down. Nah, ain't no way they coach as Fat Albert. What the fuck? Florida State's defense was the talk around the country as they were strapping up everybody they played against, and Zay Flowers was no different. Last season, Deion matched up with Zay Flowers and completely shut him out of the game, and this season was no different. Boston College was struggling to get anything going on offense, and this interception wasn't going to help him. Anytime Zay touched the ball, he got his ass lit up, and Florida State was 6-0, halfway to a perfect regular season. But they did have to travel to Death Valley, and even though Clemson was 1-5, this was a tough-ass team with a lot of talent. These teams were holding each other to straight field goals in the first half, and after Deion took this stiff arm to hell and laid on the ground like a coward, he would actually redeem himself later in the drive and will break this pass up on 3rd and goal. By the third quarter, Florida State found themselves up by 7, and Clemson couldn't have any of that as they would go ahead and try to answer with their own touchdown. We were tied at 13 in the fourth quarter until the corner opposite of Deion would get tried on this 3rd and 8 deep pass, and of course he would let up the touchdown, which would wind up being the game winner. Florida State's perfect season was over just like that. Miami-Florida State is always a big time matchup regardless of the records of the teams, and even though Miami was 1-6, this was a team that had Florida State's number the last couple of years, and Deion knew it, and they needed everything they had to stop Miami. The offense would score just 7 points through 3.5 quarters of play. It was just 7-0 late in the fourth quarter, and Miami needed a touchdown to send this game to OT, but Deion was single-handedly stopping this Miami offense at the goal line as he would break up that pass, and on 4th and goal, they decided not to try him again, but it wouldn't matter as Florida State would hold on, and NC State would come in at town the very next week, but this was a team that was much better than that Miami team that Florida State just took on. This was looking like a defensive battle early, and it was just 3-0 with less than a minute to go in the second quarter until NC State put this touchdown on the board. My man Dion got absolutely blessed that this receiver would drop this pass on 3rd and 11, but it wouldn't matter because the very next possession, NC State would punch it in to go up by 11. Florida State would march down the field and score this touchdown and convert the 2-point conversion, but with the game on the line on 4th and 1, Dion would get trucked by the quarterback for the first down, and after suffering 2 losses in 3 weeks, Florida State needed to get it together, and Jordan Travis was the one to do that. Because I'm not gonna lie, this Florida State defense was not the same as they were earlier in the season, and Dion was struggling. He did have this great stop on 3rd down to force the punt, and the very next possession, they would snuff out this screen pass on 3rd and 6 to force another one. But with just a minute left in the second quarter, Wake Forest would throw this deep pass over the middle and complete it, getting inside the 5-yard line, and Dion had a brain freeze and just didn't cover anyone on this pass. Jordan Travis and the offense couldn't answer on 3rd and goal and would miss the chip field goal to go up by 10. So it was still just a 1-possession game, and Wake Forest needed to drive the length of the field to force this game to go to OT. But with the game on the line, primetime Deion Sanders would come up with the biggest interception of the season, killing Wake Forest drive and giving Florida State their 8th win of the season. And with all the ups and downs that this season has had so far, it was nice to see Florida State's defense having fun, and they needed to bring all that juice against the top 25 ranked Syracuse team next week. You're not going to believe how this game ends. Syracuse comes to Florida State in the pouring rain as 2 top 25 teams from the ACC match up. And spoiler alert, there's a lot of defense being played in this one, except for on this play when the Syracuse running back would catch this check down on 3rd and 13 and just absolutely truck everyone on the Florida State defense for the first down. Thankfully, they didn't get anything going with it, but when Florida State had the opportunity to score just before the half, they would fumble it, and it was still just 0-0 late in the 3rd quarter. Florida State would finally get something going as they would throw this pass in the flat on 4th and 6 and convert, eventually being able to just settle for a field goal. But some points were better than no points, especially in this game, and it all came down to Syracuse on this last drive. But somehow the Syracuse QB turned into prime Cam Newton. This man was doing everything on the ground and made the throws that he needed to make. Now I'm telling you, this man was really turning up on the ground. He would run it on 3rd and 1, and on the very next play when he didn't find anyone open, of course he would use his legs, this time going for the go-ahead touchdown. It was rivalry week as Florida State took on Florida in the swamp, and it was an absolutely perfect day for throwing the football, just not at Deion Sanders. Florida State would take the lead in the second quarter with this field goal, and it looked like it was going to be another defensive battle like they just had against Syracuse last week, and Deion was going to be the one to lead that defensive effort for Florida State because he needed to step up. And even though the Gators were 3-8, they were playing for pride. They were down 10-0 in the 3rd quarter until the Gators running back would rip off this incredible run, but his ass was slow as molasses, or Deion was just fast as hell because he'd be able to hawk him down inside the 20. Florida was scoring that possession, but they were still down by 3, and they needed to get something going, but they could not get away from Deion Sanders, who would intercept this pass. It would turn into a touchdown for Florida State, but in the last seconds of the game, to rub salt in the wound, Florida would run this spin route, but Deion would play it perfectly, and he would intercept it on the sideline. Florida State would finish the regular season with 9 wins, and had the opportunity to go to a bowl game to end the season with double-digit wins. They were in the Cheez-It Bowl last year, so let's see where they end up this time around. Ain't no way in hell Florida State's taking on Nebraska in the Duke Mayo Bowl in the snow. And of course, Nebraska's QB was looking like Tim Tebow out there. I mean, he was on a different level on the ground. But Nebraska definitely had the competitive advantage playing in this cold-ass weather, and Deion and company were not ready for it. I'm telling you, that Nebraska QB was on some different shit. He was bugging out. It looked like Florida State was going to get something going when they would force this fumble here. But of course, Nebraska would recover it for the first down, and on the very next 3rd down, they would fumble again, but Nebraska would recover again. They tried to take a shot at Deion right before the half for a touchdown, but would have to settle for a field goal. I'm trying to tell y'all, this man was running like the Incredible Hulk. Like, how are you breaking this many tackles on one play against this Florida State defense? Nebraska was absolutely whooping on Florida State, but Florida State had one final chance late in the game, down by a touchdown. They needed to recover this onside kick, but they wouldn't be able to get it done. And after Deion finished as a first-team All-American, he was wondering if he should go and declare for the draft early. Leave in the comments what you think Deion should do. And if you got this far, please subscribe.